The grim-dark universe of Warhammer 40K is vast. Its lore spans millennia, and countless Xenos, warp entities, and humans inhabit it. Throughout Game Workshop's 30-plus years of Warhammer 40K, many authors have written the beloved and not-so-beloved stories that have gripped our wargamer minds. Due to this, we have many inconsistencies within the lore, and between character personalities, history of certain civilizations and empires, and of course, power scaling. Who's the better fighter? Who would win in a hypothetical matchup between this guy and that guy? These questions are all over the place in the fandom, and oftentimes the answer isn't as straightforward or easy to find. Much of this is due to the inconsistencies from novel to novel and edition to edition. With Warhammer 40K, the folks at GW have given authors the freedom to pretty much put their own personal spin on the narrative, which is why sometimes we have huge deviations from the lore that sends the fandom into chaos. And one of the biggest things that I can think of is that of Drago versus Mortarion. So we have the Demon Primarch Mortarion losing on a one-on-one fight against Drago, who is essentially a chapter master of the Grey Knights. He's powerful, he's a psyker, he's meant to fight chaos, but at the same time, to kill and take on a Primarch by himself, let alone one who has ascended to demonhood, should never have happened. And yet we have Drago overpowering Mortarion, stomping him down on the ground and carving his fallen superior's name on Mortarion's chest before vanishing back into the warp. And yeah, this is crazy. But we have Matt Ward to thank for this showcase of bad power scaling. Just imagine if somebody read the newest Godblight novel. In this novel, we see none other than Mortarion taking on the Primarch Guilliman, and Guilliman dies. He legit loses to Mortarion here, but of course the Emperor revives him. But look at it this way. Mortarion beat Guilliman, who was a Primarch, but Mortarion lost against Drago, who's basically a Space Marine. So in this instance, a Space Marine is stronger than a Primarch. No, that should have never have happened. So the lore was retconned, and GW basically said that that's not really how the events happened. Basically, Drago did his best to beat Mortarion, and it did happen. However, he had the help of prognosticators who knew the name of Mortarion, which severely weakened him. And on top of this, he wasn't fighting alone. He did have squadrons of Grey Knights to assist him, but he ended up dealing the final blow. So yes, Drago did win against Mortarion, but it was a grueling death match that almost killed him. Ever since this happened, either GW became stricter with their criteria for authors when writing the lore, or the writers themselves became more on the same page when it comes to what each faction or each character is capable of. For the longest time, we knew that the Adeptus Custodes were the best of the best. They're the Emperor's bodyguards. They basically are nigh unkillable. However, throughout the lore, we see inklings of them losing to certain combatants, and that's normal. We have 1,000 Custodes taking on 100,000 orcs, and only 3 die. That kind of makes sense, because orcs aren't that tough to beat. I mean, Space Marines do it all the time. But when you're fighting 100,000 orcs, chances are they're going to get a few lucky hits in. The green tide will overwhelm some of the Custodes, and it happened. But that is crazy, where only 3 fell against 100,000. Obviously, they're pretty powerful. But then you read some stories, such as in the Horus Heresy, where the Gal Vorbak, which are demon-possessed Chaos Space Marines, were obliterating squadrons of Adeptus Custodes, literally beheading them, ripping their spines out of their body, impaling them through their impenetrable armor. These were things that kind of didn't really make sense, but when you look into the details, these were the strongest possessed Space Marines ever. The Gal Vorbak were on a league of their own, and so it is possible that they could have taken out the Custodes. And then we have something similar in the newest lore for 10th edition, Leviathan. We have the Emissary of Norn, a super powerful Tyranid that is capable of taking out 5 Custodes before being brought down. So there are Xeno races in the galaxy that are on par with the Custodi, because it doesn't make sense for the Imperium to have the best fighters in the galaxy, because that just kind of brings down the realism of this universe that, even though it is grim dark, even though it is kind of sci-fi fantasy, you do have to have some type of playing field to kind of keep the universe grounded and just not make it something wacky and unbelievable. So one of the things that I wanted to cover more in depth here is an excerpt that shows you just how tough certain Primarchs are. Because oftentimes we have Primarchs that get shot with bolter rifles and bolter guns, and it seems like nothing happens, but then other times they get shot by bolters and they take heavy damage. So here is one of these instances where Lorgar takes on a Titan and keeps on kicking. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and dive into this 40k lore. The Warhound fired. Its comet-tailed bolt of raw plasma contained within an engineered magnetic field to prevent the projectile's dissipation from the ionized atoms flying apart. Venting began at once. Ghosts of coolant steam slashing from the relief ports along the Titan's weaponized arm. The unleashment incinerated the dust, burning the air clear, and splashed the sun's core into the crater for a fraction of a second. The World Eaters caught at the blast's edges, dissolved into bones and armor shards, spilling into the air, eroding to mere powder, and then to nothing. In the crater's pit, Lorgar stood with his peaceful eyes raised to the staring Titan. Ash drifted away from his armor, the last remnants of the holy parchments bound to the ceramite. The air rippled with the force of his focus, and the kinetic shield he kept raised with his outstretched hand. The ground by his boots in a spread of several meters was unharmed. Everything else was burned to sludge, black glass. All 3 crew members leaned forwards in their thrones. Kay raised his targeting visor. "What am I seeing?" he asked. "It can't be." The Madurai Primus, Elias, narrowed his eyes to squint. "Is that?" "Fire, damn you!" Delantier was yelling. "Fire again! Brace for just fire!" Lightning failed in the cockpit as power bled from the reactor. The tech priest's voice snapped over the Vox with uncharacteristically urgency. "Core hypovolemia threat," he practically whined, "and we aren't..." Ardenner fired again before he could finish his sentence. The discharge sent the Titan rocking back 2 steps, its splayed-clawed feet crunching into the avenue to avoid falling. In the wake of its release, the weaponized arm hissed steam from its coolant veins, like a forged blade quenched in water. The lights reactivated. Kay's targeting visor came back online only a moment later, and the control consoles followed. "He must be dead. He has to be dead. We've killed a Primarch. Walk us closer." The Warhound realigned, coming around to stare back down into the crater. Kay's eyes flickered between the annihilation below and the pulsing chime of Auspec's contact. "Inbound engines," he said. "Legio Audax and gunships. Declaration signatures marking them as the 17th. Daltonier spoke through clenched teeth. "They're too late." The Primarch of the World Bearers had fallen. His armor, once red and engraved with scripture, was an ashen husk of charred plate. Cracked and weeping skin showed around the patchwork spread of bleeding burns. Not a patch of skin was left untouched. He didn't rise from his knees. He didn't lift his head. He did nothing at all. "He's dead," Elias spoke softly. "Fire again," Daltonier breathed the words. "Fire again." "You've bled the core," Kay replied. "We're plasma-starved. Fire the suppressing tracers. 3 bursts." Ardenter's anti-infantry bolters spat their tracer fires at the prone Primarch. The first burst chewed glass, spraying fragments everywhere. The second, too, punched home in the scorched armor, blasting the fallen Emperor's son onto his back. A vessel of cooked, punctured meat. We've just killed a Primarch, Kay swallowed. We literally have just killed a Primarch. So what do we have here? Within the pages of the book Betrayer, we see Lorgar taking on blast after bolter fire from a Titan, and that is no mere feat. As you can see, the first blast itself obliterated the Space Marines nearby him. However, the first shot was blocked with his psychic might. The second one, he wasn't so lucky. As you can see, his skin was scorched, he wasn't really moving, and then when he got hit with those bolter rounds, he was basically hit off of his feet and sent prone. But this did not kill the Primarch, because clearly we see Lorgar continuing to kick butt throughout the Horus Heresy, and he has achieved apotheosis into the 41st millennia. So this is pretty crazy, because we've seen that a single sniper rifle bolter round from an assassin took out a Primarch, Conrad Kurz. Now, it's a little bit different here, whereas Lorgar was trying to defend himself from the Warhound Titan, and Conrad Kurz wanted to be killed. So could a single bolter round kill somebody if they're willing to put their defenses down? Whereas a friggin' Titan could not kill something when they were literally trying to kill it. Yeah, there's a little bit of inconsistencies, but still, when you're looking at Primarchs, things don't always make the most sense. You have Primarchs being beheaded and falling, dead, such as with Ferrus Manus, but other times you see them taking blades to the heart, blades to the back of the neck and stuff like that, and they still keep on fighting, regenerating, and coming back to full health. A poison blade could take out a Primarch, as we've seen with Guilliman pretty much twice now. The first time with Fulgrim, he would have died if he wasn't put on stasis and brought back with life support. And he died again against Mortarion with all his toxins and poisons from Nurgle, but the Emperor brought him back. So it is a very fine line that we tread when reading the lore and of 40K, because when it comes to power scaling, when it comes to overall lore, it's very inconsistent, but I think that's what makes 40K really unique. There is no guarantee, there is no solidifying features of the lore that we can 100% deem as correct, because when reading 40K, we're kind of seeing this through the eyes of the Imperium, and we know that the Imperium is flawed. Their records are broken, they don't really know what exactly the truth is, because the warp really tends to play with the senses of humanity to the point where what you see may not actually be what you see, what you experience may not be the truth. There's always some underlying truth behind this veil of what humanity deems as truth. So we don't really know what exactly is going on. Even to this day, you would think humanity is super technologically advanced, they know what they're doing, but no, that's why there's STCs that they're trying to get, because there's technology that they have that they can't reproduce. There's technology that they don't know how it works, that's why they pray to the machine god to make things work. And even nowadays, they don't even know what year it is. They have a ballpark estimate, it must be the 41st millennium, it must be the 42nd millennium, but they could be off by tens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. And that's crazy, but that's the awesome grim darkness that is Warhammer 40K, and it just proves that nothing has to be set in stone to be something perfect that we can enjoy. Everybody has their own idea of what Warhammer is, and everybody has their own idea of how things work. For the most part, there is a consensus, but I think it's really awesome and unique that we can kind of make our own thoughts and ideals, make itself known within the lore of 40K. So, that's all I got for today, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think is the baseline for 40K? Do you think the ambiguity of the lore is amazing, or do you wish it was more set in stone? If you guys want to help support us even more, I greatly appreciate all the likes, the subscriptions, the comments. You guys can support us more with a super thanks or head on over to our Patreon and pledge a simple $1 a month. And that's all I got for today, guys. It's been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Peace.
Oh, if you could put my freedom first.